Hello everybody, I'm going to read The Omnivore's Dilemma, Young Readers Edition, Chapter 16, The Market. Greetings from the non-barcode people. In the industrial food chain, the typical item of food travels 1,500 miles before it is eaten. Compared to that, the polyface beyond organic food chain is incredibly short. Almost all of the 300 chickens we'd process Wednesday morning would be eaten within a few dozen miles of the farm. Remember, Joel doesn't ship his products. That's what brought me to Polyface in the first place. Joel refused to ship me a steak. I was learning that even where and how he sold his products was an extension of his worldview. Originally, I thought Joel sold locally just to keep from burning fossil fuels. While that's certainly part of his thinking, it's only part. He sees his farm as part of a local food economy. He wants the sale of his eggs and meat to help other local businesses, like small shops and restaurants. He feels selling his eggs or chickens in a chain supermarket supports the industrial food industry, the very thing he's trying to get away from. The Salatans believe having a direct relationship with their customers is very important. Don't you find it odd that people will put more work into choosing their mechanic or house contractor than they will into choosing the person who grows their food? He asked me. Once a year, he sends out a newsletter to his regular customers. A recent one began with this greeting. Greetings from the non-barcode people. That kind of sums up the way he looks at himself, his farm, and his customers. They are dropouts from the industrial agribusiness food chains, trying to build a new one. Solving the Omnivore's Dilemma. I met several of those customers on Wednesday afternoon as they came to collect the fresh chickens they'd reserved. These people were paying a higher price for polyface food, and in many cases driving more than an hour to come get it. But they were not wealthy, upper-middle-class people. They were a real cross-section of types, including a school teacher, several retirees, a young mom with her tow-headed twins, a mechanic, an opera singer, a furniture maker, a woman who worked in a metal plant. What brought them all together at Polyface Farm? Here are some of the comments I jotted down. This is the chicken I remember from my childhood. It actually tastes like chicken. I just don't trust the meat in the supermarket anymore. You're not going to find fresher chickens anywhere. All this meat comes from happy animals. I know because I've seen them. I drive 150 miles one way in order to get clean meat for my family. It's very simple. I trust the Salatans more than I trust Walmart, and I like the idea of keeping my money right here in town. What I was hearing, in other words, was the same Omnivore's Dilemma that had spurred me to write this book. Somehow, getting meat and eggs from the Salatans helped these folks solve their dilemma, at least a little. Getting their food from Polyface lets them feel connected to their food. These customers know exactly where their food comes from. Plus, they think it tastes better. And of course, they might just enjoy spending a little time on a farm, chatting on the porch with the Salatans, and taking a beautiful drive in the country to get here. You get what you pay for. I asked Joel what he said to people who said his prices were too high. Whenever I hear people say clean food is expensive, I tell them it's actually the cheapest food you can buy. That always gets their attention. Then I explain that with our food, all the costs are figured into the price. Society is not bearing the cost of water pollution, of antibiotic resistance, of foodborne illnesses, of crop subsidies, of subsidized oil and water, all the hidden costs to the environment and the taxpayer that makes cheap food seem cheap. He also reminded me that his meat would be considerably cheaper than it is if not for the government regulations that forced him to send his cattle and hogs away to be processed. Still, whatever the reason, organic and beyond organic food does cost more at the cash register. That is going to make it hard for some people to afford it. Yet for the great majority of Americans, the reason is not quite so simple. After all, most people would agree that food is more important than a new cell phone or cable TV or name brand sneakers. Why is it that we pay for those things without blinking, but won't pay an extra $1 for a dozen organic eggs? Nowadays, many Americans are even willing to pay for water, something we can get for free from any tap. So why are we unwilling to pay more for better food? Joel pointed out that people generally understand that quality costs more, except when it comes to food. When someone drives up to the farm in a BMW and asks me why our eggs cost more, well, first I try not to get mad. Instead, I take him outside and point at his car. Sir, you clearly understand quality and are willing to pay for it. Well, food is no different. You get what you pay for. Agribusiness has bombarded us with the message that all pork is pork, all chicken is chicken. They tell us one egg is exactly like any other, but that's just not the case. If that's what you think, then you won't pay $1 extra for the same old carton of eggs. But when you know that some eggs are not only tastier, but also healthier to eat, then $1 extra for a dozen seems like a bargain. When people know about their food, they start considering quality and not just price. Farmers markets and buying clubs. A short food chain helps the consumer know what he or she is buying. It also helps the farmer in another important way. As we saw earlier, farmers in the industrial food chain are often on the edge of going bankrupt. One reason is they make less money than supermarkets, wholesalers, and food processors. In fact, out of every $1 spent on food in this country, 92 cents goes to these non-farmers. By selling directly to consumers, Joel gets to keep more of that money. That's why Joel makes more money from his chickens than his beef and pork. He processes the chickens himself and doesn't have to pay someone else. So avoiding the industrial food chain isn't just a matter of principle, it's also good business. Besides the farm store, Joel sells polyface meat and eggs at farmers markets in the Washington, D.C. area. The number of these markets in the U.S. has almost doubled in recent years, from 1,755 in 1996 to more than 4,000 in 2008. Polyface also sells to buying clubs. These are groups of families, usually in cities or suburbs, who put together a big order once or twice a month. One person in the club collects the orders and takes delivery of the food. The size of the order makes it worth the farmer's while to deliver. In Joel's case, sometimes as far as Virginia Beach or Bethesda, half a day's drive. And then there's Joel's brother, Art, who makes deliveries to area restaurants once a week. On Thursday, I woke to the sound of Art's panel truck noisily backing up to the salesroom door. The clock said 5:45 a.m. I threw on some clothes and dashed out to meet him. Art is 5 years older than Joel, and on first impression, a very different sort of character. He's not nearly so sunny or talkative. He's even a little cranky sometimes. He's more grounded in the world, more businesslike. But then, maybe he has to be. After all, Art spends a lot more time dealing with city traffic and parking and chefs who can sometimes be pretty picky. Every Thursday, Art mounts a carefully planned military-style operation. His mission is to supply restaurants in Charlottesville, Virginia with meat and eggs from Polyface. He also sells produce, dairy products, and mushrooms from a half-dozen other small producers in the Shenandoah Valley. He gets the orders from customers, tells the farmers what he needs, and they arrive with their trucks at Polyface at dawn on Thursday. I spent the better part of Thursday riding shotgun in Art's panel truck. It's an old orange Dodge Caravan with a sign on the side that says, "On delivery from Polyface Inc. Follow me to the best restaurants in town," which seemed to be more or less the case. Many of Charlottesville's best chefs buy from Polyface. We made most of our deliveries after lunch, when the kitchens were relatively quiet. I helped Art haul in plastic totes the size of laundry baskets laden with meat and produce. The chefs had high praise for the quality of Polyface products and clearly felt good about supporting a local farm. Between stops, Art told me it was the eggs that got him his new customers. I saw how this worked at a newly opened restaurant called The Filling Station. Art introduced himself and presented the chef with a dozen eggs. The chef cracked one into a saucepan. Instead of spreading out, the egg stood up nice and tall in the pan. The chef called his staff over to admire the bright orange color of the yolk. Art explained that it was the grass diet that gave the eggs their color. I don't think I've ever seen people so interested in an egg yolk. They were clearly impressed. Unlike supermarket eggs, polyface eggs are different at different times of the year. They turn paler in the winter when the hens are not in the pasture. Art told me this was one of his biggest challenges. Many customers were not used to the idea of seasonal food. We have forgotten that meats used to be as seasonal as fruits and vegetables. For example, lambs are born in the spring. They're not ready to be eaten for 8 to 10 months in the next winter. Yet supermarkets sell spring lamb, which is meat shipped in from New Zealand. The natural seasons for red meat are fall and winter. The natural seasons for chicken are the spring and summer. If local food chains are going to succeed, customers will have to get used to eating that way again. Will customers be ready to give up the convenience of any food anytime? Perhaps they will, if they see what they are getting in return. Chefs around the country, like the ones who buy from Polyface in Virginia, are trying to teach consumers that food actually tastes better when it is fresh, in season, and grown without chemicals. These chefs, along with the buying clubs and the farmers markets, are all part of a worldwide movement. It's a movement away from the industrial food chain and toward a more local, organic food system. In Europe, there's a bumper sticker that says, "Eat your view." That's what the Polyface customers are doing, preserving the landscape by supporting the local farmers. They are part of an international movement to change the global food system. The movement includes farmers in Europe who try to preserve local food products and eating habits. Then there are farmers in India who have protested the sale of patent seeds by agribusiness. There are farm workers in South America who protest the use of dangerous pesticides. And there are people in many countries who are trying to stop the spread of genetically modified food. It's not surprising that food has become the focus of an international movement. Food is, after all, the center of our lives in many ways, even if we no longer pay very much attention to it. And it is one part of our lives we can still control. We can still decide every day what we're going to put into our bodies, what sort of food chain we want to be part of. We can vote with our forks. Consumers in the U.S. have already made big changes in the food system. Our desire to have a cleaner, healthier food has created a $20 billion market for industrial organics. Farmers like Joel Salatin, his customers, and all the people who buy from farmers markets and food clubs are trying to make another change. They are trying to make the word local just as powerful as the word organic. Changing to a truly local food economy won't be easy. It might not even be completely possible. But the advantages of moving in this direction are very clear. When consumers know once again how their food is produced, they are naturally going to want it produced in the cleanest, most humane, and environmentally healthy ways. Eating locally is also an act of conservation. Keeping local farms in business keeps the countryside from being overrun by cities and suburbs. Eat your view takes work. It means not being able to buy a tomato in December. It means giving up many processed foods. And once you give up processed foods, you may have to learn to cook, a skill that is disappearing from many American homes. Are you prepared to go that far? On my last day on the farm, a soft June Friday afternoon, Joel and I sat talking at a kitchen table behind the house. A steady stream of customers dropped by to pick up their chickens. I asked Joel if he believed the industrial food chain would ever be replaced by a local food system. "We don't have to beat them," Joel patiently explained. "I'm not even sure we should try." I guess I would sum up his view as, if you build it, they will come. He believes that more and more customers will make the choices to buy local beyond organic food. The rest will take care of itself. I think he has a point. We may need a great many food chains that combine organic food and slow food and local food in different ways. There may be other food chains we haven't even thought of yet. Nature produces diversity. Polyface Farm is home to diversity. Maybe the food system should be diverse too. Sitting on the porch with Joel, watching his customers buzzing about, I could see part of that new food system taking shape. It certainly seemed like a good start.